Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be making a video about the the top 10 NHL forwards in the league today. So, with that out of the way, let's get into our top 10. We're also going to be mentioning some honorable mentions. And also stay tuned because we're doing rankings for top 10s throughout the summer. We're doing top 10 favorite teams, top 10 teams in my opinion, top 10 defensemen, top 10 goalies, and of course, top 10 forwards today. So, let's get right into it. So, with our honorable mentions, quickly we're going to go through some of these. The Islanders, we're going to start off with Matt Barzal. He's in that category alongside guys like Bo Horvat. I think that too. That duo was really solid for the Islanders last season. A huge reason they made the playoffs. Vincent Trocheck of the Rangers, he had an incredible season last year. It was very difficult for me to not put him in the top 10, but I want to see him do it again this year. And I think very easily Trocheck will be in the top 10. Sam Reinhart of the Florida Panthers, glad to see him coming back to the Panthers. He's a really good really good player. He was good in the playoffs. The regular season for the Panthers was one of the top leaders for goals and points for the Panthers. I'm great. It's so great to see a guy like that who struggled with the team he was drafted with in Buffalo and then go to Florida and just tear it up and rip it apart and become the version of him that once he was drafted, what we thought he was capable of becoming. So it's great seeing that for Reinhart. Alexander Ovechkin being outside of the top 10 is ludicrous, I know, but he had a down season last year. So, Ovechkin is a huge reason the Caps even made the playoffs. But he's an honorable mention. And this one hurts too. This list is so difficult because, I'm looking at the respect and the term for these guys as well. And that's why you're going to see some names on this list that you're like, Kevin, that guy's too high. But the reality is it's a lot. Like, it is hard to rip some of these guys out of the top 10, and you'll understand in a minute. Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks and Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes. The fact they're not in the top 10, this is tough. Like, I'm telling you guys, this was the toughest list of like the 4 or 5 already that I've made. The active NHL players that are forwards was the most difficult one. And you're seeing very easily why when we have guys like Pettersson, Ovechkin, and Aho as honorable mentions. All right, so let's get to it because I know you guys are going to debate me a lot with this. But top 10, we're going to start off with Sidney Crosby of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I cannot, in my right mind, I cannot take Crosby out of the top 10. I can't. I didn't have it in me yet to do that. I know he didn't have the best season last year, but it's Sidney Crosby. And until he's taken out of the NHL, I can't in my right mind take him out of the top 10. I cannot do it. And I think that you could put him alongside Malkin in this category. Both of those guys are in that similar vein. Crosby's still top 10. I can't do it, guys. Number 9, Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. He is very good. And I think that a lot of my Wild fans will say, yeah, pretty easy to put him there. But I think it's one of those things that he doesn't get a lot of recognition because, let's be honest, in the playoffs, 2 years ago in the playoffs, there was a lot of criticism. He didn't perform that well in the playoffs in the big moments when everybody was watching. And last year, just the Wild did not have the best season. They kind of had a crappy season. They didn't do as well as we were hoping they would do. So Kaprizov kind of was seen under the radar, but he is still, when you watch him play, you're like, holy shit, this guy's good. And that's kind of the scenario with Kaprizov. So I still have him in the top 10. That was difficult putting him ahead of Crosby, but I think just in terms of where they're at in their careers, I put Kaprizov ahead of Crosby. Mikko Rantanen is number 8. This is another difficult one because you could say a lot of his success is because of McKinnon. But I think he's made up he's carved out his own sort of identity in the NHL in terms of what people think of him. He's a really solid player. He scores a ton of goals. He's the goal scorer there in Colorado. They relied on him a lot more last season without Gabe Landeskog. So I expect Mikko Rantanen to be a guy that continues as time goes along to be more and more of a leader in that locker room in Colorado. And he's really solid. Like now the next three guys here, including Rantanen, you're gonna see like these guys are the cream of the crop of the NHL, and it's so hard to separate them. But yeah, so Rantanen's at 8. 7 is Artemi Panarin, and I mean this is self-explanatory. You could probably put him even further up than that. Again, kind of similar to Rantanen. There's always the questions about in the playoffs, how much does he perform in the big moments? And I think that as that playoff run for the Rangers went along, he did fall a little bit. But he's still a top 10 player, no doubt about it. But Panarin, the way he scores goals for the Rangers, yes, he gets more hype because he's on the Rangers playing in Manhattan, absolutely. But let's be honest, whether he's number 10 on your list or number 3, I think it's pretty easy to say. He's right in that category in any sort of fashion. Number 6, again, you're seeing a theme here. The Russian winger goal scorers. So we've got Rantanen, Panarin, and then at 6, Nikita Kucherov. Nikita Kucherov is solid. And he's been such a big part of the sort of small dynasty that the Tampa Bay Lightning have had. His attitude and maybe his lack of performance in recent, especially this year, is one of the knocks on Kucherov, but you cannot deny the skill. This guy is so talented. And I think when you look at a guy like Kucherov, when he's on his game, he is dangerous and nobody is stopping him. But when things are a little difficult and he faces a little bit of adversity, things get tough for Kuch. So I'm hoping for another good season for him. I think playing alongside Jake Gensel, I mean, that is just a shot. That is an IV shot in the arm for the Tampa Bay Lightning offense. And I think the idea of having Kucherov, Braden Point, and Jake Gensel on the same line, that is going to be very interesting next season in Tampa Bay. So stay tuned for that. Another forward in blue and white in the Eastern Conference, as a terrible transition, but we're going to go with it here, is Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think he is, I mean, this top 5, in my opinion, I think is very easy. This was easy at this point for me. Again, it was similar to the defenseman. I think it was difficult doing between 6 and honorable mentions, but the top 5, I'm pretty confident most of you will agree with me on this. And Matthews being at 5, he is our new generational goal scorer, kind of passing the torch from Ovechkin. He's won the Rocket Richard. He's done everything that he's needed to do at this point, except get that damn cup in Toronto. I think Matthews is a generational talent. And I think at the time he was drafted, it was kind of seen that way. But a lot of people said, well, there's a lot of hype because he's going to get drafted to Toronto. So is he really generational or is it just hype? I think at this point, Matthews has proven it's not. Yes, there is hype there, but he has the ability and the numbers to back it up that he is a legitimate superstar in this league. And that one's easy for me. I hope at some point he wins a cup because this is a guy that you're going to look back in the future and say, that guy never won a Stanley Cup and he probably deserved to. Hopefully that's not the case for Matthews, but we'll find out. Another guy, definitely in that vein of category, number 4. This was difficult, but I'm going to go with Leon Draisaitl at number 4. Draisaitl here, it's so like nitpicking at this point, but McDavid is Mr. Showtime there in Edmonton, but very close second. Like basically, you have the two-headed monster that I always say. Connor McDavid's here, Draisaitl's right there. The gap is not much. Leon Draisaitl has definitely carved out a name for himself. And like I said, especially in Edmonton, that is difficult to do because there is so much attention on McJesus. But Draisaitl has definitely built his own reputation and respect there in Edmonton, not only with his teammates, but for the city. He is a huge reason the Oilers went to the Stanley Cup final this season. And I would not be surprised if they come back. And now that he's got a long-term deal locked up with the Oilers, that is just another thing that is going to be a one less distraction for him this season. The Oilers are going to try and win a cup here. And I think this season, him and McDavid, that is going to be dangerous once again. And then at number 3, we've got Alexander Barkov. He did win the cup, and you got to give him the respect where it's due. I would argue he was the best player in the NHL this season. Barkov was just that solid. And like I said, he's one of those guys that was always, maybe like 5 years ago, he's underrated. He's playing on a smaller market like the Florida Panthers, and the Panthers don't make the playoffs that much, so he doesn't get that recognition. That is no longer the case. And I wouldn't say he's overhyped at this point, but he is definitely getting the recognition he deserves. His hockey IQ is off the charts, and his back checking, his scoring ability, like everything about this guy is like, holy shit. And every time he's on the ice and has the puck, especially in that Rangers series, this guy he can hit the post every single shift and almost score. He is that much of a threat. I love Alexander Barkov, and I think it's so great that he's getting the attention he deserves at this point. Shout out to Sasha Barkov. He's number 3 here. And then at number 2, heading back to Colorado, Nathan MacKinnon is just unreal. Nathan MacKinnon, he played with the Halifax Mooseheads, playing alongside Sidney Crosby and training with him in the summers in Nova Scotia probably helped a little bit. He is seen as the rhinoceros on ice, the rhinoceros on skates. When Nathan MacKinnon has the puck, he is a combination of Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin. And I'm going to make a weird reference here, but don't take it the wrong way. If there was the best combination of Alexander Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby put together, this is Nathan MacKinnon. When he is skating on the ice, he has the physical, the ability, and the skating of like a rhinoceros that skates like a gazelle, kind of like Alexander Ovechkin, but also has the finesse and that light puck touch of Sidney Crosby. He is that is what he is. He is a mutant for all the right reasons, and Nathan MacKinnon is number 2 on this list. He's a huge reason the Avs won the Cup a couple of years back now, and that is why he's still number 2. Because, yeah, I think Barkov had the best season of anybody in the NHL last season, but in terms of active NHL players, you got to give the respect. Nathan MacKinnon is still at the top of this list in number 2. And, I mean, this is the one that I think is the easiest to do, because I think if anybody puts other than Connor McDavid at number 1 in terms of best players in the NHL right now, I'm not sure what you're doing. It is Connor McDavid, also known as Connor McJesus, however you want to call him. It is Connor McDavid. And number 97 on the Edmonton Oilers is the new face of the NHL. And this is kind of a sad thing, because if you ask a lot of people who is the face of the NHL, they couldn't even tell you who Connor McDavid is. If they said, who's Connor, do you know the best player in the NHL is McDavid? Who? Now, a lot of that is because, yes, he is not from the States. He plays for a Canadian team. That has a lot to do with it. But it's also just the way the NHL is marketed today. That's why I think this list is so important, because I think a lot of these guys don't get the recognition they deserve. And I think some players that, kind of like a Matthews or a Panarin, get a lot of attention because they're playing in New York and Toronto. But in all honesty, a lot of these other guys, even McDavid in Edmonton, kind of get forgotten in the public eye. So Connor McDavid is by far and away the best player in the NHL. This list, like I said, it is so subjective. Literally, you could put Panarin at number 5. You could put Panarin at 10. You could put Crosby at 5. You could take Crosby out of the top 10 and completely put him in the mention or the honorable list. It is so subjective, this list. But all of these guys definitely, I think, are worthy of being mentioned. And hopefully you guys maybe agree with me a little bit. Maybe you disagree with me with some of those things. So let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to know what you guys think of my list. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. This is actually going to be the last video we do with this current setup that I have right now at the moment. I'm going to be making some changes to my room. So I expect the background to be behind me, but it might look a little different. This might mean nothing when I set the new setup up and you're going to say, Kevin, it looks the exact same. Then we'll disregard it. But at this point, that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out.